So we've spoken a little bit about, you need help in Architecture Studio, you need spatial thinking to help you join Mini Studio, all that kind of stuff. But how exactly do we help you? What do we mean by fast tracking results? Now, if we skip to the end, which often I kind of like to do, imagine 3 years of an architectural bachelor's degree. Not all countries have 3 years. The old way was 5.5 years, or maybe it's still the current way. But some of the courses have become 3 year bachelor and 2 year masters. Now imagine after 3 years, before you even started the degree, or even at the beginning, what did you expect that you would get after 3 years? For a normal, you know, expectation, right? Typically we go to uni thinking 3 years, you get a degree, you get a bachelor's, and you come out somewhat aligned or useful enough to be able to get a job. Now let's go to what architects generally think. 3 years bachelor's, yeah, not very useful at all. Okay, there are two parts of that usefulness. One is the thinking, the other is the skills, the plain skill set itself. Okay, um, and so, how does spatial thinking fast track you? It fast tracks you by, at the very least, after 3 years, if you had spent a little bit of time with us, you would at least there's a couple of things that you at least know. You at least have the lingo, or at least the slight understanding of where the profession sits in terms of where you're sitting. Instead of being so green, coming out of 3 years thinking, oh, I'm gonna be great. It's gonna, I'm gonna get a job or whatever. Instead of being so green, you're gonna be a little bit more aware. Okay, aware of the massive, knowledge gaps between how you're going to be useful at work compared to where you're at as a graduated, you know, degree holding architectural graduate. It seems ridiculous to even be talking like this, but it's the truth. Once you do your 3 years, we still are struggling to find a clear usefulness for you within the architectural firm. Right? So imagine you come out after spatial thinking, after 3 years of uni, and you're a little bit more aware, you're a little bit talking the same lingo, your thinking process is more there, there as in more professional. Your design process, even though a an architectural firm is not looking for you to actually design whole sections of anything, they're probably not. And even though the design phase in the whole building process is still sort of at the beginning of the phase, not towards the end, and still sort of small. Okay, even though that's the case, but an architectural employer looking for an intern or looking for a graduate is obviously got a couple of things they're looking for. It's a skill set, presentation skill set, or the practical skill set, which we know is still going to be lacking a bit, right? But it's also the thinking process, the design process, and the creative process, because at this point in time in your career, that's all we're going to get. And it's not just how all we're going to get. The chances are, if I'm going to take a chance on you to employ you, if you even if you have the skill set, we need to rely upon you to process things or to do a process that is more aligned to a professional process. Okay, we are looking for some kind of thinking process. Okay, so and how do we tell with this thinking process? Imagine you're sending all your CVs out. You're sending 100 of them or whatever, and you don't get many interviews. So you're thinking, oh, as long as I get in front of somebody, then I can talk and then they're going to see my thinking process. Well, yes, maybe if you had one, if you had a strong and design process, right? But if that wasn't the case and you don't get a chance to come in, right, then um, then we're going to be looking at your CV, and going to be looking at your portfolio, and the portfolio will have your plans, your renders, and your designs. And as I've said before, I can tell, or most people can tell, what kind of a um, professional, or at least becoming professional person, you are based on just looking at your plan. Now, how do we do that? your planning skill set, basically how you've planned things, whether you've been considering certain things or whether you haven't been. We can tell instantly just by looking at a plan. We can tell by the section if it was an afterthought or if it was somehow aligned. We can tell by your design, you know, and our design is a bit of a wishy-washy sort of criteria for judging interns, but there are certain people who are looking for a certain kind of look or feel or things, mainly presentation skills, I suppose, right? But outside of that, there are going to be people who just look at things and go, look, fine, presentation skills needs to be worked on, but this is a clear solution to a particular problem which looks quite professionally aligned, right? And that is a difference. So you have to ask yourself, is uni preparing for this, right? Are they preparing you for, an eventual way of thinking a design result that has a clear, strong design sort of outcome and the process that was used to create that outcome? Is it clear in your plans and sections? Or was it still fumbling? Um, were you sort of still following instructions? And it wasn't just you. If the instructions to begin with, are you still complaining, even in your third year or your second year, about how poorly things are run, or how ridiculous the feedback is, or what you're not learning? If you're still complaining, then why waste time? You know, um, try and get help, even if it's not from special thinking. Get help somewhere else, or look up things where you can go. Some of you think that you need to produce a better portfolio, and that is true. But again, I'm looking at a portfolio, not just presentation skills. I'm looking at your process, and it's represent. I can see it in your plans and sections and drawings. Okay, so that is sort of how we fast track. Um, the other thing that I'd like to mention is, I teach first years in architecture, and through the studios that I've taught them through the spatial thinking method, it has elevated their design results to a second or third year result, right? I've taught second year, and their design results have become third or master's results, right? And so I can help students achieve a much higher result, higher year, or more mature design outcome at earlier years, because 3 years is really short, right? And now I have to say, I did the 5.5 year course or 6 year course, and by the time I was in third year, I was probably still kind of advanced in a way. I was in the middle of it, but I was kind of advanced compared to some of the studios or the work that I've been seeing in the various unis. And that is primarily because of that confusion, the lack of coordination, or just the lack of real results coming out of these studios. Okay, so I hope that answers how we actually help. Okay.